5:42 in the afternoon. That's when everything stopped making sense. I was on the back porch with my tea, watching the sun drop behind the pines. Silver Pine Lake stretched out like a mirror, perfectly still, perfectly quiet. The kind of moment you spend your whole life chasing. Then I saw her, Elena. My daughter-in-law. Standing waist-deep in the water with a brown suitcase gripped in both hands. She didn't know I was watching. I set my cup down slow, thinking maybe I was seeing things. The light does tricks sometimes when it hits the water at that angle. But no, it was her. Black jacket. Hair tied back. And that suitcase, old and battered, dangling from her arms like dead weight. She swung it back once. Twice. On the third swing, she launched it forward with a force that didn't match her size. The suitcase hit the water hard. A dull thud echoed across the lake. It bobbed for a second, then started sinking. Elena just stood there. Staring. Her lips moved, like she was saying something to the water itself. Then she turned, waded back to shore, climbed into her car, and drove off, gone. My chest tightened. The teacup slipped from my hand and hit the wood. It didn't break, just rolled in a slow circle and stopped. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. My brain kept trying to make sense of what I'd just seen, but nothing clicked. Why would she throw a suitcase into the lake? Why here? Why now? It had been 8 months since we buried my son. 8 months since the accident took him. Elena had been quiet since then, distant, even. But this? This was something else. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I moved anyway. Down the porch steps. Across the grass. Toward the shore. The air smelled like rust and algae. The sun was almost gone now, turning the water dark orange. I could still see ripples where the suitcase went under, small circles spreading outward, fading into nothing. I stepped closer. The mud squelched under my shoes. And there, just beneath the surface, I saw it. A shadow. The suitcase hadn't sunk all the way. It was hovering, caught on something, swaying gently like it was waiting. Waiting for me. My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct told me to turn around. Go inside. Call someone. Let it go. But I couldn't, because 8 months ago, my son died in a car crash on a road he'd driven 1,000 times. And the police said it was an accident. And Elena said he'd been stressed. And everyone said it was just bad luck. But standing there, staring at that suitcase, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel until now, doubt. I kicked off my shoes. The cold water bit my ankles as I stepped in. Then my knees. Then my waist. My clothes soaked through instantly, heavy and freezing, but I didn't care. I reached down. My fingers found the handle. I pulled. It was heavier than it should have been. Not clothes. Not books. Something else. Something that made my arms burn as I dragged it back to shore. I hauled it onto the grass, panting. Water poured from the seams. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the latches. They popped open with a wet click. I lifted the lid, and everything I thought I knew about my son's life shattered in that moment. Letters, dozens of them. Stacked inside waterproof sleeves, bound with string. The ink hadn't bled. Whoever packed this knew what they were doing. My hands were numb from the cold, but I grabbed the first envelope anyway. It was addressed to me. My name in handwriting I'd know anywhere. My son's handwriting. I tore it open. Mom, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally surfaced. The words blurred. I blinked hard, trying to focus. I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Too dangerous. But I need you to know what happened to me wasn't random. It was planned. My stomach dropped. Check everything in this case. Read every letter. Don't trust what you've been told. And whatever you do, don't let Elena know you found this. The letter ended there. No signature. Just his initials scratched at the bottom like he'd been in a hurry. I flipped through the rest. More envelopes. Some addressed to me. Some to Elena. Some with no name at all, just dates written in the corner. Then I saw it. At the bottom of the case. A small metal box. Locked. Heavy. Something rattled inside when I shook it. I tried prying it open. Nothing. The lock was solid. I'd need a key. But tucked beside the box was another envelope. Thicker than the others. I ripped it open and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. At the top, in bold letters, "If she tells you I was paranoid, she's lying." My breath caught. Beneath that were 3 names I didn't recognize. A company logo, Helios Research. And a phone number with the area code scratched out. On the back of the page was a single sentence: "The lake isn't the only thing hiding secrets. Check my office. 3rd drawer." You'll know what to look for. I sat there on the wet grass, shivering, staring at those words until they burned into my brain. My son had been investigating something. Something big enough to get him killed, and Elena knew she had to. Why else would she be out here, in the middle of nowhere, throwing this suitcase into the water? She wasn't mourning. She was covering tracks. I looked back at the lake. The sun was gone now. The water had turned black, swallowing the last light of the day. For 8 months, I'd believed the story. The accident. The grief. The funeral. But my son didn't write letters for no reason. He didn't hide evidence in a suitcase and bury it in a lake unless something was wrong. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I didn't care. I grabbed the suitcase, the letters, the locked box, and started walking back toward the house. The cold didn't matter anymore, because somewhere in that office, in that 3rd drawer, was the answer to what really happened, and I was going to find it. There were more letters underneath. Dozens of them. Some were sealed. Some weren't. Some had Elena's name written across the front in my son's handwriting. And at the very bottom, tucked beneath everything else, was a small metal box. Locked tight, I wiped my eyes and started reading. The first letter was short. Just a few lines. "Mom, I've made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. If anything happens to me, don't believe the surface of the story. Check the lake. Everything I couldn't say is there. Check the lake." Those 3 words hit me like a punch to the chest. I tore open another envelope. This one was longer. His handwriting was messy, like he'd been rushing. They're watching me now. I can feel it. Elena thinks I don't notice, but I do. She's been different. Distant. She asks too many questions about my work. My hands started shaking. I kept reading. Page after page. Each one worse than the last. He wrote about late-night phone calls Elena would take in the other room. About files disappearing from his computer. About feeling like someone was following him. The last letter I opened wasn't finished. It ended mid-sentence, like he'd been interrupted. If Elena ever goes near the lake again, that was it. Nothing else. Just a jagged line where the pen had dragged across the paper. I sat there on the wet grass, staring at those words until they burned into my brain. What had he been about to say? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those letters. Heard his voice in my head. Felt the weight of what he'd left behind. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into Nathan's study. It still smelled like him. Coffee and ink and old books. His desk sat exactly where he'd left it. Papers stacked in neat piles. His typewriter covered with a cloth. His favorite pen lying sideways across a notebook. I stood there, surrounded by his ghosts, and tried not to fall apart. He'd been an investigative journalist. The kind who chased stories no one else would touch. Corruption. Corporate cover-ups. Things people wanted buried. He'd mentioned a company once. Helios Research. Said they were doing breakthrough work on memory treatment. Trauma therapy. Stuff that could change lives. I'd asked if it was dangerous. He'd smiled and said no. Just another story, but that smile hadn't reached his eyes. The day before the accident, he'd called me. Late. Almost midnight. Mom, I found it. I found the proof. His voice had been shaking. Proof of what? I'd asked. I can't say yet. Not over the phone. But I'm close. Really close, Nathan. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just, if anything happens, remember I love you. Then he'd hung up. The next day, his car went off the road. Hit a tree at 70 miles an hour. The police said he must have fallen asleep at the wheel. But my son didn't fall asleep while driving. He never did. I looked down at the locked box in my hands. Shook it gently. Something rattled inside. Whatever Nathan had found, whatever proof he'd been talking about, it was in here. I just had to figure out how to open it. Standing in that room, I felt it in my bones, every instinct screaming that I'd stumbled into whatever Nathan had been trying to expose. But why would Elena have those letters? Why throw them in the lake, unless she was hiding something? I started searching his desk. Pulled open every drawer. Checked behind picture frames. Lifted the typewriter. Nothing. Then I remembered something Nathan used to do when we were kids. He'd hide things in places you'd never think to look. I pulled out the bottom drawer completely. Flipped it upside down. And there it was. A small silver key. Taped to the underside. My heart jumped. I grabbed the locked box and slid the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click. Inside were three things. A flash drive wrapped in paper towel. Like he'd been protecting it from water. A photo. Elena standing between two men in white lab coats. Behind them was a glass building with the Helios Research logo etched across the front. She was smiling. But it wasn't the smile I knew. It was colder. Sharper, and beneath that, a folded note. I opened it with shaking hands. If she tells you I was paranoid, she's lying. My stomach dropped. I stared at the photo again. Elena had told me she worked in marketing before she married Nathan. Some low-level job. Nothing important, but this wasn't marketing. This was research. Science. She was standing with people who looked like they ran the place. She'd lied about everything. I grabbed the flash drive and went to Nathan's laptop. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely plug it in. A password screen popped up. I tried his birthday. Wrong. I tried mine. Wrong. Then I stopped. Took a breath. Thought about what Nathan would use. My husband, his father, had died 12 years ago. Nathan never forgot that date. He'd visit the grave every year. Same day. Same time. I typed in the date. The screen unlocked. Files flooded the monitor. Dozens of them. Audio recordings. Scanned documents. Video clips. Screenshots of emails with names blacked out. One folder sat at the top. Labeled Final Proof. I stared at it. My hand hovered over the mouse. Part of me didn't want to open it. Didn't want to know what was inside. Because once I knew, I couldn't unknow it. But I clicked anyway. A video started playing. Nathan's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his car. Filming himself. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. If you're watching this, I'm either dead or disappeared. And if that's true, it wasn't an accident. My throat tightened. Helios is testing experimental memory drugs on unwilling subjects. They're erasing people's memories. Rewriting them. And Elena helped them recruit. No. She thinks I don't know. But I do. They paid her to keep tabs on me. She's the reason they found out I was going public. He leaned closer to the camera. His voice dropped to a whisper. If I disappear, she's not the grieving widow you think she is. She's part of it. And Mom, if she ever tries to destroy these letters, it means she's tying up loose ends. Don't confront her alone. Then I heard it. A car door slamming. Close. Nathan's head snapped toward the sound. His face went pale. She's here. The video cut to black. I sat frozen, staring at the empty screen. Elena hadn't just known about my son's death, that she'd caused it. I replayed the video. Nathan's face filled the screen again. Same bloodshot eyes. Same messy hair. Same desperate look, but this time, I caught details I'd missed before. The timestamp. 11:47 p.m. The night before the accident. The location marker in the corner. A parking lot. Empty. Dark, and in the reflection of his window, headlights. Someone else was there. Nathan's voice came through the speakers, low and shaky. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Helios is testing experimental memory drugs on unwilling subjects. They're taking people, vulnerable people, and erasing parts of their minds. Then they're implanting new memories. False ones. My hands gripped the edge of the desk. Elena helped them recruit. She'd find people who were desperate. Homeless. Addicts. People no one would miss. She'd bring them in under the promise of treatment. Free therapy. A fresh start. He paused. Rubbed his face. His hands were shaking. She thinks I don't know. But I do. They paid her to keep tabs on me. She's been reporting everything, who I talk to, what I'm working on, where I go. She's the reason they found out I was about to go public. He leaned closer to the camera. His eyes locked onto mine like he was staring right through the screen. If I disappear, she's not the grieving widow you think she is. She's part of it. She's been part of it from the beginning. And Mom. His voice cracked. If she ever tries to destroy these letters, it means she's tying up loose ends. Whatever you do, don't confront her alone. Don't trust her. Don't. Then I heard it. A car door opening. Close. Too close. Nathan's head snapped to the left. His face drained of color. She's here, he whispered. His hand reached for the camera. The screen went black for a second. Then static. Then nothing. I sat there. Frozen. Staring at the empty screen. My chest felt tight. Like someone had wrapped a rope around my ribs and pulled. I replayed it again. Paused on his face. Studied every detail. The fear in his eyes. The way his jaw clenched. The tremble in his voice. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a man losing his mind. This was someone who knew he was running out of time, and he'd been right, because the next morning, his car went off the road. Crashed into a tree. Killed instantly, they said, but now I knew better. Every cell in my body screamed disbelief. Denial. This couldn't be real. Elena was family. She'd cried at the funeral. She'd held my hand. She'd looked me in the eyes and told me how much she missed him, but deep down, beneath all that denial, I knew, the way she'd stood at the lake yesterday. The way she'd thrown that suitcase like it was poison. The way she'd whispered something to the water before walking away. This wasn't mourning, this was cleanup. She'd been erasing evidence. Destroying proof. Making sure no one would ever find out what really happened, and if I hadn't been on that porch at exactly 5:42 p.m., watching the sunset over Silver Pine Lake, she would have gotten away with it. I closed the laptop. My hands were still shaking. Nathan's voice echoed in my head. Don't confront her alone. But what other choice did I have? I called Elena the next morning. My voice was steady. Calm. I didn't let her hear the fear underneath. I found something of Nathan's, I said. I think you should come see it. There was a pause on the other end. Long enough that I almost thought she'd hung up. Then she answered. What did you find? It's better if I show you in person. Another pause. I'll come by tonight. Around 7. She hung up before I could respond. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I put the suitcase on the table. Left it open. The letters spread out like evidence at a crime scene. When 7 o'clock came, I heard her car pull into the driveway. I stood by the window and watched her walk to the door. She looked the same as always. Calm, composed, like she was coming over for tea. I opened the door before she could knock. She smiled. "Hi, Margaret." That smile. Like nothing had changed. Like my son wasn't dead because of her. "Come in," I said. She stepped inside. Her eyes swept the room. Then they landed on the table. On the suitcase. Her face drained of color. "Every drop of blood gone in an instant. You went through it," she said quietly. I did. She didn't move. Just stood there, staring at the letters like they were ghosts. "You think you know everything?" Her laugh came out sharp. Brittle. Like glass breaking. "Oh, Margaret, you don't even know the half of it." She walked to the table. Ran her fingers across the edge of the suitcase. Then she sat down. Crossed her legs. Folded her hands in her lap, like a woman being interviewed. "Not accused, what do you want?" I asked. She looked up at me. Her eyes were cold now. Empty. "To finish what Nathan started," she said. "But differently." "You mean cover it up?" "I mean control it." I felt my stomach twist. "Control what?" She leaned back in the chair. "Helios wasn't trying to cure trauma, Margaret. They were erasing it. Wiping memories clean. Like resetting a computer." My breath caught, "And it worked," she continued. "Better than anyone expected. We could take someone's worst memory, abuse, war, loss, and make it disappear. Completely. Like it never happened." "We?" I whispered. She smiled. Not warm. Not kind. Just satisfied. "I helped design the drug. I'm a neuroscientist. That's what I do. Not marketing." That was a cover story. My legs felt weak. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "Nathan found out," she said. "He was digging into Helios for a story. He didn't know I worked there. Not at first. But then he started connecting the dots. And when he figured it out..." She trailed off. Looked down at her hands. "You told them," I said. "I had to. He was going to expose everything. Destroy years of research. Ruin lives. So you had him killed." Her head snapped up. "No. I didn't kill him." "Then who did?" She stood up. Walked to the window. Stared out at the lake. "Helios has people who handle problems," she said. I reported what Nathan knew. They decided what to do about it. I didn't ask questions. My hands curled into fists. "You let them murder my son. I let them protect something bigger than one man's life." She turned back to me. Her face was blank. Emotionless. "And now you know," she said. "So what are you going to do about it?" Elena turned back to face me. Her expression shifted. Softer now. Almost sad. "You think I killed him," she whispered. "But you're wrong." I stared at her. "I watched the video. I heard what he said. He was right about everything," she said. "Except one thing." "What?" "He's not dead." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the table. "What are you talking about?" She pulled out her phone. Scrolled through something. Then turned the screen toward me. A photo. My heart stopped. Nathan. Sitting in a cafe. Sunlight streaming through the window behind him. A cup of coffee in front of him. Beard grown out. Hair longer. But it was him. He was smiling. Not the smile I knew. This one was lighter. Easier. Like he didn't have a care in the world. I looked at the date stamp. 2 weeks ago. No, I whispered. No. I buried him. I stood at his grave. I watched them lower the casket into the ground. You buried someone who believed he was Nathan, Elena said quietly. A decoy. A man who volunteered after one of our treatments failed. His memories were scrambled. He couldn't remember who he was anymore. So we gave him a new identity. Nathan's identity. My legs gave out. I collapsed into the chair. His body was identical, she continued. Same height. Same build. Same hair color. The crash destroyed his face. You never saw it. No one did. Closed casket, remember? I couldn't breathe. Where is he? My voice cracked. Where's my son? Somewhere peaceful, Elena said. Far away from here. The drug worked on him. Better than we expected. He doesn't remember Helios. He doesn't remember the investigation. He doesn't remember any of it. She paused. Looked down at the photo. He doesn't remember you. The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. What? He thinks his name is Aaron Hale. He lives in a small town on the coast. He paints sunsets. Sells them at a local market. He's happy, Margaret. Happier than he ever was before. Tears burned my eyes. You erased me from his memory. We erased everything. That was the deal. He agreed to it. He would never. He did. Elena's voice was firm now. The night you saw in that video. When I showed up. We didn't kill him. We gave him a choice. Disappear and live. Or stay and die. He chose to disappear. I shook my head. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Why? I whispered. Why tell me this now? Elena slipped her phone back into her pocket. Because they think you still have the files, she said. The flash drive. The documents. All of it. If I don't retrieve them and bring them back, they'll come for you next. And they won't give you a choice. She walked toward the door. Stopped. Turned back one last time. Give me the drive, Margaret. Let Nathan stay dead. Let him live his new life. If you go looking for him, if you try to bring him back, you'll destroy him. And they'll destroy you. She opened the door. You have 24 hours to decide. Then she left. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat there in the silence. Staring at nothing. My son was alive. But he wasn't my son anymore. He was a stranger who painted sunsets and didn't know my name. That night, I sat alone in the dark. The letters were spread across the table like ghosts. Each one a piece of my son I'd never get back. My son was alive. But he was gone, and I was the only one who knew the truth. That I had evidence. Real evidence. The flash drive. The documents. The video confession. Everything I needed to destroy Helios. To expose what they'd done. I should have called the police. Should have gone to the press. Should have made sure everyone knew what happened, but I didn't. Because I kept thinking about that photo. Nathan sitting in that cafe. Smiling. Peaceful. Free. He'd looked happy. Really happy. In a way I hadn't seen in years. And if I exposed Helios, if I went public with this, what would happen to him? Would they find him? Would they erase him completely this time? Or worse, I didn't know. And that not knowing paralyzed me. I reached into the suitcase. There was one envelope I hadn't opened yet. Tacked at the very bottom. My name written on the front in his handwriting. I tore it open. Mom, if they find me, don't try to bring me back. You'll only get hurt. Remember me as I was. Burn everything. My hands started shaking. Tears blurred the words. I know this is hard. I know you'll want answers. But some truths are too dangerous to chase. Let me go. Please. Just let me go. I folded the letter, pressed it against my chest, and cried until dawn. When the first light broke through the window, I knew what I had to do. I gathered everything. The letters, the flash drive, the photos, the locked box. All of it. Packed it back into the suitcase just the way I'd found it. Then I walked down to the lake, the same spot Elena had stood. The water was still, perfectly calm. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the surface orange and gold. I stood there for a long time, holding that suitcase, feeling the weight of everything inside it. This was the truth. The proof. The justice my son deserved, but it was also his freedom, and I had to choose. I thought about Nathan. Not the man in the cafe. Not Aaron Hale. But my son. The boy who used to run through these woods. Who used to skip stones across this water. Who used to tell me everything would be okay. He'd chosen to forget. Chosen to start over. Chosen peace over truth. And maybe I needed to do the same. I swung the suitcase back. Once. Twice. On the third swing, I let it go. It hit the water with a hollow thud. Bobbed once. Then started to sink. I watched it disappear beneath the surface. Watched the ripples spread outward. Watched them fade into nothing. The water went still again. And for the first time since Nathan's death, the world went silent, not the heavy silence of grief, but something lighter. Quieter. Like the moment after you finally let go of something you've been holding too tight for too long. I turned and walked back to the house. Behind me, the lake swallowed the truth whole. And I let it point. 3 months passed. I stopped going to the lake. Stopped looking at old photos. Stopped waiting for answers that would never come. Life became quiet again. Not peaceful. Just quiet. Then, one morning, I found something in my mailbox. A plain white envelope. No return address. No postage stamp. Just my name written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A man standing by the shore. Ocean stretching out behind him. Sunset painting the sky orange and pink. He was holding a paintbrush. A canvas sat on an easel beside him. He looked relaxed. Happy. Free. It was Nathan. Older. Beard fuller. Hair lighter from the sun. But it was him. I turned the photo over. 6 words. Written in his handwriting. Thank you for letting me forget. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of the counter to keep from falling. He remembered. Somehow, some part of him still remembered. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe this was Elena's doing. Maybe she'd sent it to give me closure. Or maybe it was someone else entirely. Someone from Helios making sure I stayed quiet. I didn't know. And I'd never know, but I kept that photo, put it in a frame. Set it on the mantel next to the old pictures of Nathan as a kid. The ones where he was smiling, that real smile. The one I'd thought I'd never see again. Now I had proof he was still out there. Still alive. Still okay, and that had to be enough. Some nights, when the house got too quiet, I'd walk down to the edge of the property. Stand where I could see the lake through the trees. The water was always still. Always calm. Like it was keeping a secret, and sometimes, when the wind carried just right, I'd swear I heard something. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Like someone calling my name from far away. I'd turn. Look around. But there was never anyone there. Just the wind. Just the trees. Just the water holding its secrets beneath the surface. It wasn't haunting. Not really. It was remembering. Remembering the son I'd lost. The truth I'd buried. The choice I'd made to let him go, and on those nights, standing there in the dark, I'd whisper back, "You're welcome," because even though he didn't know who I was anymore, even though he'd never come home, even though I'd never hold him again, he was free, and that was worth more than any truth I could have exposed. The wind would pick up. The trees would rustle. And for just a moment, I'd feel it, peace, not the kind you wait your whole life for, but the kind you earn by making the hardest choice you'll ever make, the kind that comes from loving someone enough to let them forget you. I'd stand there a little longer. Then I'd turn and walk back to the house. Behind me, the lake would go still again. And I'd let it. That's why I never go near Silver Pine anymore. I sold the house 6 months later. Moved inland. Somewhere without water. Somewhere I wouldn't be tempted to look for answers beneath the surface. Because what I found inside that suitcase wasn't death. It was something worse. Erased truth. Living absence. A son who chose to forget me. People ask me sometimes if I have kids. I tell them yes. One son. And when they ask where he is, I say he moved away. Started over somewhere new. It's not a lie. Not really. He did start over. Just not in the way they think. At night, when I close my eyes, I see it all over again. The lake. The suitcase sinking. The ripples spreading outward until they disappeared. I see Elena standing in the water. See Nathan's face on that video screen. See the photo of him painting by the shore, and I wonder, does he ever get flashes? Moments where something feels familiar but he can't place why? Does he ever look at the ocean and feel like he's forgotten something important, or did they erase me so completely that there's nothing left? Not even a ghost of a memory? I'll never know. And that's what haunts me. Not his death. Not even his disappearance, but the fact that somewhere out there, my son is alive. Breathing. Painting. Living a life I'll never be part of. And he has no idea I exist. Every morning when I wake up, I wonder if he's watching the same sunrise I am. If he's mixing the same colors on his palette. If he's seeing the same light I once watched reflect off Silver Pine Lake. Does he paint that light? Does it call to him the way it called to me, or is it just light to him now? Nothing more. Nothing less. I hope he's happy. I really do. I hope Aaron Hale, whoever he is now, lives a long, peaceful life. I hope he never remembers what he lost. Never feels the weight of the truth he used to carry, because that weight nearly killed him once, and I chose to carry it instead. That's what mothers do. We carry things our children can't. We make choices they'll never know about. We let them go when holding on would destroy them. Even if it destroys us in the process, peace, I've learned, doesn't come from forgetting. It doesn't come from knowing the truth either. It comes from finally letting go, from accepting that some stories don't have endings. They just stop. And you have to keep living anyway. So that's what I do. I live. I wake up. I make my coffee. I watch the sunrise from a house with no view of water, and I carry the secret of what really happened at Silver Pine Lake, not because I want to, but because I have to. Because my son chose to forget, and I chose to remember, for both of us.